Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Partisan Voice. Finally, after so many months of being gone, I've been off at college. You guys have been doing your thing, I'm sure, but I just made the decision that being at college, being away from home without access to all of my equipment, plus just not having a whole lot of time because of classes and all that, I would not have time for the podcast, unfortunately. But it's summer, the sun is shining, and we are back. Today's episode is going to be about friendship. And with me today to talk about the very intricate, complex topic of friendship is my good friend, Ivy Wessel. Ivy, say hi.
Hey y'all, what's up?
Yes, so Ivy and I have been friends for many years. We met back in, what is it, like late 2020,
Yeah,
early
2020.
21? Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. So we've kind of been around the block in terms of
Oh,
friendship, right?
oh
Like
yeah, we have.
we've seen a lot of people go in and out of each other's lives. We've strengthened our own friendship. We've gotten to know each other really well, trust each other a lot. Um, I'm also friends with her older sister, so I've gotten to kind of be a little bit on the inside of the family dynamic
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
too, but we don't need to get into all that. um, but anyway, Ivy, why don't you start us off by giving what your definition in your own words of friendship would be?
Yeah, so when you search the definition of friendship on Google, what pops up is a state of mutual trust and support between allied nations, or I just like to say between two people. And I like that definition a lot because when you think of one of your best friends, they should be someone who you're able to trust and confide in. And everyone needs that person to talk to, and that's where a trustworthy friend can fill that very important role. And of course, they should be someone who supports you. And in a real friendship, it won't be in like a selfish kind of way where they only care about the outcome if it, benefits them.
Mm,
But truly in a way that shows they care about you and helping you succeed and get that outcome you're looking for. And just overall, a friend who you can trust to give that real support.
definitely. So, to start us off after that definition, we're going to talk about love. There are very many different kinds of love, and I think everyone would agree that there needs to be some sort of love present in a friendship, some sort of love, some sort of care, some sort of at least positive feeling towards the other person. If you're
Right.
if you don't like someone, you're probably not going to
Yeah.
call them your friend. So to start us off on the topic of love, I wrote something a little while ago about what I think love is. And I write some poetry, so this might sound a little bit, I kind of use some big words just to make it sound a little bit prettier, but I'll try to condense it as much as I can after I finish reading it. This is one of my very many just random ideas that I get. Those of you who know me well know that I kind of just think a lot, and when I come up with an idea, at first it's a little bit hard for me to share because
Yeah.
I'm afraid that it's like gonna get absolutely just destroyed by the person I share it with.
Dang.
But after thinking about this for a long time, I think I'm ready to share it. I've only shared these ideas about what love is with a few people, but I think it's pretty solid, honestly. So um, I'll read it. Love is essential to life. It is not a mere convenience or privilege for those who happen to stumble upon it. Love is a part of being human, and there is not a single person who can live a full life without it. There are three parts to love: care, trust, and sacrifice. The three are tied together and are inseparable when placed under the label of love. Care is the emotional aspect of love. It requires one to feel as though he is attached to another, to enjoy his company, and to desire his approval and care in return. Trust is the intellectual aspect of love. It is bred through experience, consistency, and integrity. Trust is intellectual because it causes someone to know, not simply feel, that he can depend upon the person he loves. Finally, sacrifice is the most strange aspect of true love. Sacrifice stands in defiance of logic, reason, and higher human judgment. It is also, however, not based in pure passion and emotion, as sacrifice is often a continuous experience and emotion is fleeting. No, sacrifice comes from a third place, a place beyond the feeling of the heart and the knowledge of the mind. Sacrifice comes directly from the Spirit. It requires a person to hold fast to all of his spiritual virtue, and only through this action and through reliance on God can true, selfless sacrifice be made. So, true love only exists when the entirety of the heart, the mind, and the spirit are all invested into this love. It is not simply a passionate desire, nor is it a series of released chemicals in the brain. Love is a series of thoughts and actions that culminate in an unbreakable bond between two people. So, there's a lot there, obviously. Like I said, a lot of big words just because I like making things sound pretty. But basically, what I'm trying to say there is that love has those three parts of care, trust, and sacrifice. And care happens in the heart, sacrifice or trust happens in the brain, and sacrifice happens in the spirit. And when all three of those parts of who you are as a person are invested into that love, or are invested into that relationship, that is when love can be formed. So, Ivy, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I like really loved what you said. It's just about like the sacrifice because it definitely goes back to the definition because it's not gonna be like a selfish thing if it's like true love. And I've been in plenty of friendships where it's like you can just totally see like they really truly don't care and it's not that kind of selflessness and it's really just about what they can get out of it. Um, and that's just definitely not what that true love in a friendship is like. So I really like what you said about sacrifice there.
Yeah, sacrifice is definitely the weirdest of the three parts because it's just so it's unnatural. Like you don't see much of that in non-human nature. Like you
Right.
don't see very much of animals sacrificing their lives for each other, right?
No, yeah.
And that's why I would say it is a very spiritual action
Yeah.
because animals obviously don't have spirit. They aren't spiritual beings made in the image of God, and humans are. And I believe that spirit is what causes us to desire to sacrifice for each other.
Yeah, and even I was in this Bible study once and we were talking about love in the other aspect, and we were just kind of talking about how, the difference between like love being all about you and love being for yourself. And another thing we were talking about was how there are kind of three things that go into loving um, from a girl's perspective, a man in a relationship. And we kind of get that third kind of love that a lot of other people don't get, and it is a spiritual kind. And it's just like one of those amazing things you're able to experience because you're able to grow in your relationship with God through them as well. And I think that's also very true when it comes to friendship as well because you also get to grow with them spiritually and you have all these like you have the Bible to give you all these examples of how to be a true friend and truly love someone and you just get that extra kind of a relationship with someone when you have that spiritual aspect. So I think that's really important too to talk about.
Mm. Yeah, so that's sacrifice. Let's talk about care for a little bit. Care, I think, is a really interesting thing to talk about in light of the world that we have today. I remember I posted, I think I tweeted a few months back about how fed up I am with how much care is just completely like not a part of culture right now.
Yeah.
In fact, it's cool and especially I will say especially in circles of guys, it's cool to not express
Yeah.
any care. It's
Hmm.
cool to just be chill, quote unquote chill,
Right.
or just like laid back with everything.
Hmm.
And to not express your desires, whether it's positive, like you want something, or negative, if you don't want something, or if it's like, I really care about this person. Well, no, you can't say that. That's weird. Like you just need to be like just chill with them. Just be like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're cool. Or it's again, especially with guys. I don't see it as much with girls, but it is there for sure.
Yeah.
I remember there was a couple times when I was at college where I would have to kind of pull back from a group that I was a part of just because it was like that in that group. I didn't feel that genuine sense of care coming from one person to any other person in the group. And I realized that I had no influence in that group to make that happen. And so I kind of just needed to step back out of it because there was no way for there to be healthy love in that group. And I think that care, as a concept really needs to be more encouraged in relationships, and people need to know that it's okay to care about things. It's not
Yeah.
it doesn't make you weird. It doesn't make you just not a fun person to hang out with
No.
if you actually care about things. No, it makes you human, and it makes you genuine, and it makes you vulnerable. And I think all of those things are very good things to have in a loving relationship.
Yeah, for sure. I've even heard of people who've had to end relationships because they've been like, it just really seemed like this guy, he just didn't care. Like, he didn't care about anything. He didn't care about what restaurant we would go to. He didn't care about what movie we watch. And I wanted his opinion on some things. And I think when you like just care a lot in a friendship, it adds more depth to it and more meaning that could be strongly lacking without that kind of care.
Hmm.
And it's definitely I've seen it more, like you said, in guys and just in their relationships, but especially in their relationships with girls too, or just friendships. Um, there definitely is that lack of care, and yeah, it would add so much more meaning. I feel like to that kind of a friendship, and even in a friend way with like girls, you see it too. I've been in those situations before where it's just lacking, and it's like you can just tell it's like the care because it it kind of will lead to different decision making that you would see in a friend who is like one of your best friends who you know cares. They would make different decisions than someone who you can tell just doesn't care. They're careless. They're like YOLO, you know? And so it's just, yeah, it adds that kind of extra thing that can strengthen the friendship, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think that those are the two that are probably most agreed with when I've read people these thoughts on love of mine in the past. Everyone's on board with care, obviously. That's probably the most across the board one. A lot of people are on board with sacrifice. Some people have said that sacrifice should only take place in a romantic relationship, which is, a point worth discussing, but not something that I would say I really agree with. And trust, interestingly, is the one that a lot of people will question. Not because they don't think trust is important in a loving relationship, but because a lot of people will say that trust is not a purely intellectual thing. Now, my point is that trust is only intellectual. Trust does not come from feeling. Trust does not come from the spirit. Trust comes from the mind because it's pattern recognition. At the end of the day, I would say that's what trust is. It's recognizing this is the way that someone can act, or this is the way that someone does act a lot. Therefore, I can depend on them to act that way in a future situation. So, for example, if I know that Ivy is a woman of very high morals. And I know that if I left my wallet sitting on the table next to her, she's not going to steal
No.
it, right? So, because I've seen her demonstrate that trustworthiness in the past, I know that she's not going to do something like that in the future. It wouldn't make sense.
Right.
So, trust, I think, is all about what makes sense, what way that a person acts makes sense. And because of that, I've seen friendships get absolutely destroyed over somebody making one big mistake. And I absolutely hate that because it's like, yes, trust can be broken. And it is easy for trust to be broken. But I really don't think that it should be necessarily. I mean, if a person has acted one way throughout your entire friendship, and then in one situation acts opposite that way, in my mind, it doesn't make sense to end the friendship over that because it's like, well, they haven't changed. They're still the same person. They're still likely to act in the good way in the future. It's just that in one situation, they decided for some reason to act in that negative way. Now, of course, I would say it is more common for friendships to end because of consistent bad behavior on one person's end,
Right.
that causes the other person to just be, it causes the friendship to be destroyed. But there have been situations that I've seen like that where one misstep on one person's end can lead to the friendship being completely broken. And I think that's really sad. I don't think that that's the way that trust should work at all.
Yeah, and I think like if you kind of lead that off into like another area of trust is like gossip. And I think that especially if you're basing your friendship with someone off of, your spiritual just trusting God and just, your relationship with God in general, you're not going to most likely go and gossip about the other person. It's definitely something that's pretty easy to mess up on for sure. But kind of like what you said, if you have one friend who's just constantly gossiping, you're not gonna expect them to all of a sudden just be able to hold that secret in. But I think that's another thing that's like so great about having that spiritual aspect of a friendship because like I said, if you're trying to base your friendship with someone just solely on God and have him at the center, like you're going to know the Bible says like don't gossip. And that's going to be something you really are going to work on with them. And then you're just going to have an overall benefit in that friendship because I mean, in so many friendships I've had, and I've definitely messed up on this too, but if like you can't trust someone with information, like it goes back to what the definition of friendship is, like having that mutual trust between someone. If you can't have that, I feel like that's one of the core parts of friendship. Like that's gonna be one of the first things I notice about someone. If I know someone like
Mm,
at school and I can't trust them to like hold anything in, then most likely I'm not gonna further that friendship with them. So
yeah.
I definitely feel like trust is like one of the most important ones on that list.
Yes. Okay. I definitely agree with that. So moving on to a big question. This question was asked to my Partisan Voice Instagram account. And it is a question that I've heard asked many, many times in many places. It's all over TikTok,
Oh
all
my
over everywhere
gosh.
on social media.
Yeah.
Can a guy and a girl really just be friends? Or is there always going to be that pull to romantic attachment?
Mm.
And this is a question that, very much affects me as as a guy who his entire life has had the vast majority of his friends be females. I mean, from the time that I was very, very young, my first friends, being homeschooled and being fairly cut off from most social circles that a child would normally have, at least for the first part of my life through like late middle school, something
Mhm.
like that. Um, Almost all of my friends came from my church. Now, in my grade at church, I was the only guy. Okay, so imagine a Sunday school class where it's just one grade and it's 15 girls and Caleb, right? So
Okay.
from my childhood, not only did I get a lot of exposure to understanding girls and trying to understand how they act, that's a big task for guys throughout your life. It's like just learning how to read and how to healthily interact with the opposite sex. And I would say probably same with girls for guys. Would you agree with that, Ivy?
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Good.
Definitely.
So it's not just like guys are stupid or anything, I hope.
No.
um so that being said, I got that exposure, and I also got a lot of female friends. Um, when you're that young, it's hard to form as deep friendships as you do when you're older. But that really kind of kicked me off to having the same pattern in my friendships throughout high school. I was very much attracted to friendships with girls. A lot of people thought that I was gay because of it. That's not the only reason, but that was one of the big reasons that people thought that people throughout high school would think that I'm gay. Now, obviously, for those of you listening who don't know me as well, I'm not gay.
Philip's not gay.
Hey guys, like chill
Calm
with
down.
that. But I do meet a lot of the stereotypes of what a gay man looks like. And so I had a lot of female friends. I've always had a lot of female friends. I currently have a lot of female friends, although I would say that I have much more healthy relationships with my female friends than I've tended to have in the past. So, that being said, the question of whether or not those friendships can actually exist really affects me. If the answer is no, then
Sorry, Caleb.
then well, one of two things can be true. Either I've just been attracted to all of these women without realizing it, or that none of the friendships have been real.
No,
Either
yeah.
way, I'm kind of screwed, right?
Right. Yeah.
If the answer is yes, then okay, good. I've just been having normal friendships throughout my life. Um, Now, let me preface this conversation with saying that I think everyone would agree that friendships between two people of the same gender and friendships between people of opposite genders are very different, right? I have friendships with guys. My I have two that immediately come into mind when I think of my guy friendships, and those two friendships are vastly different from any friendship that I've ever had with a girl. Um, Even someone as awesome as Ivy, right? Like there's a closeness, a brotherly bonding there that can only be achieved between two guys, not between a guy and a girl. And would you say the same thing on the girl end?
Yeah, it's definitely the same when it comes to a girl side because I can think of some of my guy friends who have become my closest friends, and it's just so different when it comes to girls. Like, you can talk about the same kind of things with guys, but there's just so many other things that you can't just talk to them about,
Mhm.
and you need that same gender kind of a friendship. I feel like just to get through life. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of ways in which guys and girls can be similar, just in terms of like having similar personalities. Ivy and I have very similar
Yeah.
personalities.
Except for
And
I'm not gay.
hey now, no.
Don't get so mad about me.
Yeah. No, but yeah, so Ivy and I have very similar personalities, but there are some experiences that all girls have, or that the vast majority of girls have, and there are some experiences that the vast majority of guys have, and those experiences are what guys can bond over that they can't bond over with a girl, or what
Yeah.
girls can bond over that they can't bond over with a guy.
And I think that's like healthy and
Oh
natural.
yes. Oh
So
yes. Completely. I
yeah.
mean, we see. We'll get into this more later. What guy friendships do look like, and what girl friendships do look like. But now that we've established that those same gender friendships are different than a friendship with two people of opposite genders, let's talk about, can those friendships with two people of opposite genders, can those really exist? Now, I would say the obvious answer is yes. I
Yeah.
mean, there are many guys that I know who have female friends.
Mhm.
All of them, in fact. I don't know a single guy who doesn't have female friends. I
Yeah.
don't know a single girl who doesn't have guy friends. I think the question that is at the heart of this question is, can they have a friendship any romantic, without any pull to a romantic attachment?
Right.
So, like, if for example, let's take our friendship, Ivy.
Mhm.
Somebody who would answer that question with no would say, "Well, you two, sure, you're friends, but either Ivy has a secret little crush on
A
you,
little
Caleb,
bit.
or Caleb has a secret little crush on Ivy," and obviously that wouldn't ruin the friendship unless that crush was expressed,
Yeah.
but I think the point would be, it is there, and that is kind of supporting why the friendship exists.
Mhm.
So it's a tough question because I think it's very subjective. I think there are a lot of situations where that does happen, where even without knowing it, a guy will be friends with a girl because he has some sort of attraction to her, whether that's physical, emotional, spiritual, psychological, any of the O's.
Yeah.
Um,
Old.
yes, so it's there are definitely situations in which that happens.
Yeah.
Now, as a guy, I can say that with the vast majority of my female friends throughout my life, I have not had that attraction.
Mhm.
There have been, I don't believe in the idea of soulmates. I mean, I believe in it in the sense that God has a person out there for almost everyone, that they will connect with, and that they can have a very healthy romantic relationship with. However, if you are living apart from the will of God,
Mhm.
which I do think is possible, that can mean that maybe you don't maybe you aren't with that person. Maybe you're with someone else. And I think that there are multiple people um, that everyone can have a healthy relationship with, right? So it's like, um, if I have when someday when I marry someone, I can recognize that this is the person I want to be with for the rest of my life. This is the person that God has for me to be with for the rest of my life. However, there are other people that I could maybe have a healthy marriage with. It's just that I'm choosing to not be married to those people. I'm choosing to be married to this person.
Right.
So I don't believe in the idea that there's just one person out there for everyone. So maybe there have been times in my past where I have unknowingly been like attracted to one of my female friends just because of the fact that like they are one of those people that I could have a healthy romantic relationship with. Um, that does not mean that it is impossible for me to have a friendship with most girls or even those girls. I can still have a healthy friendship with them, a complete friendship with them, apart from my even if it's subconscious influences. But that might exist in some relationships, and even if it exists unknowingly. What would you say, Ivy?
Yeah, I think I completely understand what you were saying just about like there's gonna be that person that you marry, but that doesn't mean that there's other people who there is not other people who you would consider. I think
Mhm.
that's the only thing I would say about that is that's completely if you're living by the will of God, where His will for you and His
Right.
final decision comes into play. Because I think we could also like have this idea of like what it'd be like to be married to someone and like I can make that work or like we
Hmm.
can make that
Yeah.
work. But I think that's kind of just like based on our own feelings, which isn't
Hmm.
a bad thing because like hopefully you would want to think that with the person you're gonna
Right.
get
Right.
married
Right.
to. But I do think that I could agree with if someone said there's only one person, by God only has that one person in
Hmm.
mind for you. There's definitely though, yeah, other people who you could definitely picture yourself with because I feel like that's, I mean, if you're in a serious relationship with someone before you get out of that relationship and find the person you're gonna get married to, or just the relationship. I mean, before you get married to someone else, um, there's definitely like you could definitely have that very strong feelings like I can marry this person. Like I know my mom did with someone before she met my dad.
Yep.
So I definitely agree. It's something you can feel for sure. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think what's really hard about like the whole question like can you be best friends with a guy like or with the opposite sex without it becoming more. Someone I know phrased it as like he's like it's impossible for you to he's like it's impossible for someone of the opposite sex two people of the opposite sex to be friends without them being attracted to each other. And I was like, okay, so how do you explain the fact that I have one of my best friends, I'm not attracted to him, he's not attracted to me? Like, how
Yeah.
do you just explain that? We're
Right.
forced into this idea that, nope, that's not possible. And
Hmm.
that's a hard thing. It's because I don't necessarily know how to explain better that I don't like this one of my
Yeah.
best friends. Like, I just don't. And you're forcing me into this idea
Hmm.
that, nope, it's not possible. And, maybe people are trying to say like it's kind of how you can't have a friend group with relationships in it because what if they break up, then it's not that the friend group's not gonna last any longer.
But moving on
But
from that touchy
yeah.
subject.
Of course. It could like I completely understand that if you are in a friendship with someone of the opposite sex and one of them does have feelings for the other person or they both have feelings for each other, it's not just gonna stay normal friends because you're either gonna jump into a relationship and it's gonna be the person you marry, it's gonna be someone you break up with, and then what, are you gonna just have a normal best friendship with them after? Like,
No.
no, you're
No.
not. And so, or I mean, otherwise, it's just gonna get awkward between you guys or not gonna talk anymore.
Right.
And so
Exactly.
it's like, yes, of course, in that situation, I don't think two people who do like each other are best friends can possibly survive like the best friendship, but it definitely could if you get in a relationship lead to marriage.
Yeah.
But you know, it would be very hard for that relationship to last with you guys both having
Hmm.
feelings for each other while still trying to keep up just best friends.
Yeah.
That's definitely very hard. And if that's what people are saying, that makes a lot more sense. But just simply saying you can't be best friends with someone of the opposite sex without liking each other, that's so hard because it forces you into this whole idea and you're just like it's a lose situation.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's this really prevalent idea in the world right now that you are not meant to control your natural desires. So this ties in because a lot of people will say, well, so let's assume, even just for the sake of the argument,
Yeah.
let's assume that in every guy-girl friendship, one of them likes the
Yep.
other. All
Let's
right.
assume.
So the idea would be, okay, well, that means the friendship is impossible. That is not true, right? Because we, as humans, we have natural desires, yes. And well, this is the conversation for a lot of Christians about homosexuality.
Yeah.
I don't know very many Christians right now. You know, we can talk about this in honor of Pride Month. I don't know many Christians in the present day who don't admit that homosexuality is ingrained into someone's being. Because I would say it is. I mean, every person who is attracted to the same gender, they were, for lack of a better phrase, born that way. Not in the sense, nobody's born with a sex
No, I
drive,
know what you
but
mean,
like
right?
they it is a part of who they are to be attracted. It is natural for them to be attracted
Right.
to the same sex. That being said, I'm just using that as an example. We're not talking about that today, but we a lot of Christians will make the point then that we are not meant to give in to all of our natural desires.
Right.
It's not how we were created. I mean, if everyone gave in to their natural desires, a woman would not be able
It'd
to
be so
walk down the
simple.
street without getting raped. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, the kinds of things that go through the minds of a lot of men, um,
And women too. I mean.
well, and women, right? Nobody would be able to walk down the street without
And
terrible things happening to them.
right, and that's why the Bible talks about that. Like, if we like we're trying to live under the will of God, but all just spend to our like natural human desires, like it'd be so
Yes.
sinful.
Right, because our natural human desire is to sin, right?
Right.
That sin is ingrained into the nature of all of us. Like, so that would be a point that I have in the topic of homosexuality, and the topic of this is that yes, you have natural desires, whether that's natural desires to pursue someone of the same sex, natural desires to pursue someone of the opposite sex, but maybe not the right person, right? It's all natural, but that doesn't mean that it's good. Not
Right.
everything that is natural is supposed to happen. There are plenty of things, plenty of natural desires that we have that we are not meant to give into.
I mean, that's the whole like joke on TikTok of my intrusive thoughts. Like, you're
Right,
not
right, right.
supposed to
Yeah.
give in
You're
to
not
that.
supposed to like suck that toe or whatever it is. You're not supposed to stick your hand down the disposal in your sink and
Right.
like there are so many things that you're not supposed to do that
Yeah.
your brain tells you, do it, do it.
Yeah.
I get this, like if I'm ever standing on top of a really tall building, I can
No, you're
feel
like,
like myself being like pulled over the
no.
edge because like it feels like death is like just like
It's right
grabbing
there.
onto my collar and just like
Your brain or something. Do it.
right, exactly. And that's why I hate heights, because I feel like
Oh my
what
God.
if my mind just like convinces me to just jump,
Well,
like
just don't.
well, exactly, exactly. So it's like
Exactly.
I there are two wills that every human has. I would refer to them as the natural will and the sentient will. Your natural will is your animal instincts, right? The instinct to breathe, right? The instinct to eat every
Right.
day, the instinct to drink water when you're thirsty. And then your higher will, your sentient will, is the will that we have because we are spiritual beings. The will to not just do what we naturally would do, but to do what we should do, to do what is good, right, helpful, to do what is godly if you are a Christian. Now, that will is the one that I would say should master us. Of course, when the two don't contradict each other, it's fine to have both. It's fine to eat because eating doesn't contradict your sentient will. But when the natural will contradicts the sentient will, that is when you need to say no to the natural will and yes to the sentient. So in this situation, we have let's say a guy who has a female friend and is attracted to her. That friendship can still work through the guy saying no to his natural will, saying, you know what, even though it is completely natural and fine for me to have feelings for this girl, because I know that that's not what I want to do, that's not what God wants me to do, if that is the case, and because I know that it would not be healthy for me to pursue these feelings, I don't have to pursue them.
Right.
Case closed. End of story. The friendship continues. It's not, I'm making it sound a lot simpler than it actually is. It's
Right.
not that simple. It is difficult to drop feelings for someone. I've had to do it in the past. I've had to realize, I have feelings for this specific friend of mine, but that relationship would not work.
Right.
I don't feel God calling me to that relationship. Um, she does not want that relationship with me. The best thing to do right now would be to will those feelings away. And it is possible. It is always possible to will feelings away. No matter it's hard, it's difficult. It is one of the most difficult things that humans are called to do, to rise above their natural instincts. But it is something that we are called to do. So I would say that it is very possible to have a healthy friendship, even when one person might have feelings at some point for the other.
Yeah, and when it goes back to like I've never heard it in like those kind of two like different wills that
Mm,
um we have as humans, but I think I agree with what you say about like we should live by the sentient. Am I saying that word right?
yes, sentient.
Sentient will. But if it can exist for Christians as like they would look to their like as their sentient will, it'd be like God and what He wants and like His plan for you. But then if it can also exist as a will for people who aren't Christians or aren't people who believe in God, then they can have like totally different beliefs of what you should do. And I think that if they live by that, that's kind of one of the things that causes all this controversy in our world right now. So I think that I would say for people who are looking to God as their final authority, it should definitely be the thing that is the will that we live by.
Yeah,
But it's really hard because there's kind of like that natural like you're not gonna just put your hand in the fire like
right.
that's one of those natural things that you should live by. You should just do that, and those kind of things can coexist for believers and non-believers. I feel like, but those are those like huge like decisions or something like that, or huge things that you should or shouldn't do, and people who are just like of the opinion of a non-believer, I feel like if they live by that, kind of like I said, like it can just cause some of the
Mm,
controversy that is already happening in our world right now. So
yeah.
it's kind of hard, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, I think one of the main differences between the natural will and the sentient will is that the sentient will is malleable, right? It can be changed. And the natural will can be too, but only through natural causes, right? If you have the natural desire to stick your hand in the fire, you're not going to have that natural desire anymore if you give into it, right?
Yeah.
You're going to stick your hand in the fire, get burned. You're no longer ever going to have that natural desire again unless you're like I don't know. Um, you know what? Never mind. We're not going to go
I know what you're doing.
there. But with a sentient will, it is up to you. And this is we're getting a little bit into more of a theological side
We
of
definitely
things,
are,
like
yes.
with what in terms of free will and what humans are able to decide for themselves. But I would say your sentient will is completely your decision. It is your decision what morals you want to base your life off of. I would say there are good morals and there are bad morals that you can base your life off of, but in the end, it is your decision whether or not you want to murder that person. It is your decision whether or not you want to rape that person.
I mean,
It is
God
your right.
allows that decision up to us as
Exactly.
well. So I do,
Exactly.
yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So in the end, your sentient will is your decision. You can choose what what parts of your natural will you want to give into, what parts you don't. You can also choose like outside of your natural will. What do you want to believe in your life? How do you want to act out those beliefs? That's all part of your sentient will, but it's your choice. Whereas your natural will, your
It's more like common sense. You're
yeah,
saying,
it's
right,
it's more like it's the things that life teaches you that you can't unlearn.
right,
Not sticking your hand in the fire, eating every day or you'll die.
right.
Just doing things that are naturally things that your body tells you to do. Now, of course, if we're going back to relationships, one of those things is sex. I mean, we have to, I don't think we can talk about like natural wills and sentient wills without discussing sex, because sex is one of like eating, breathing, and producing offspring,
Reproducing, yeah.
and reproducing is like those are the three things that every living organism, well, most almost every living
Half of
organism
the no.
does. so it's, sex is something that is a natural part of your will, but just like with eating, you don't want to just give into that all the time, right? There are things that you should and shouldn't eat. There's healthy ways to eat and there's unhealthy ways to eat. Similarly, sex is a natural desire, but there's healthy ways to have sex and there's unhealthy ways to have sex.
And definitely like kind of going back to like the from our point of view as like Christians, um, from our point of view, we have to, be married first and you
Yes.
wait. So that's kind of like another point. But
Yes.
for people who aren't believers, that's going to be one of those things that's like really tricky, I feel like, because they're just going to think, I can give in to that because I
Hmm.
don't follow by those rules or anything.
Right.
And it's just like, even in a way where it's like not as like, from a believer's perspective, like there are consequences that come to that too. So, it's hard, but
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing is that with every area of our lives as Christians, it is extremely important to surrender that to God so that
right.
He has control over it. Now, if you aren't surrendering that area of your life to God, that area of your life will look very unhealthy. You might be, going back to some of the most natural instincts that you can have, you might be eating in an unhealthy way. You might be having sex in an unhealthy way, like with a lot of different people. That's
Yeah.
not the way sex was designed to be had.
Right.
Um, and that's one of the reasons that we are called to wait to have sex within marriage, because it's a very intimate thing, it's a very special thing, something that should only happen ideally with one person throughout your life. Obviously, that is uh, very, very rare that it does end up only happening with one person throughout your life. That's what I strive for. That's what a lot of people strive for. Um, so yeah, I would say that we've covered the topic pretty well. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
guys and girls can have good, healthy friendships. But like we were saying before, not like friendships between two people of the same gender. So let's talk about those a bit. Let's
All
talk about,
right.
why don't you start us off? What, as a woman,
Uh-huh.
because you are one, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
just to,
Yeah, just to
preface.
make sure. Um, yes, Ivy is a woman, just for those of you who are listening who might
Just in case
not.
you thought it was a man the whole time.
Yeah. um, so Ivy, what does, at least in your experience, obviously there is some personal aspects to it, but in general, what would you say most female friendships look like?
Yeah. So I feel like with most female friendships, I feel like when you look towards kind of like a male friendship, it's like, oh, it's the bros and stuff. And kind of what we were talking about earlier, it lacks that kind of care and not in all situations, but in a lot of them. And with girls, I feel like that's one of like the most important things. When once you like hit that like best friend status with a girl. I mean, like there's a bunch of people who can pop up just in my mind when I think about like some of my best girlfriends and like they're just those people who like they care a lot and there's so much like depth in that friendship because of the care. And so I feel like kind of to define it, it's very we're very confusing people. um, it's really hard because oh I don't want to give away any of our secrets.
Oh,
Ooh.
come on, spill the tea. I know there's a lot of guys
You
listening to the
know,
podcast. They'd love to hear
I
that.
know they just love to hear. Yeah, but just two people who really can just support each other and um, just care for one another in a way that a guy wouldn't be able to for a girl in just a friendship way. Um, and you kind of do need that person like in your life. You just need you need one of your girlfriends, just like spill the tea with not gossip necessarily, but yeah.
Not gossip, just talk about other
Just talk
people.
about other people, yes, and their information. Um, yeah, so I don't know. It's kind of hard to define it honestly, because it is kind of similar to guy relationships, and it can reach the same kind of like depth. I think it's just really hard. I feel like that definitely is one of the main differences between guy and girl friendships. Because even I feel like if you're a guy and you talk to a girl, like they're just like so much more gentle most of the time and like caring and even like I feel like apologetic too when it comes to so many things. Um, but yeah, so I think it kind of also goes back to like the traits of a girl, and once that same gender relationship comes into play, like as friends, let me preface,
Yeah.
um, it is that match that God like made on purpose, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Um, it's funny. I was thinking about this a lot last summer. I went to see Top Gun Maverick.
Oh my gosh, it's so
Such
good.
such a good movie. I would say one of the
Highway.
I would say one of the best movies to
Oh
come
yeah,
out of Hollywood in the past decade, just because
yeah.
there's been so many trash ones. Um,
Name us a trash one,
uh,
Caleb.
uh, I don't think I want to get that controversial on this pod. I'll say some pretty
Oh
controversial
yeah,
things,
you
but
really
when it comes to movies, I'm not gonna say that like Captain Marvel was a terrible movie.
Oh my gosh.
No, but so when one of the biggest reasons that I really liked that movie was the examples of male friendships that were in that movie. I thought they were amazing.
Really?
The way that you saw, I don't remember a whole lot of the story, but I remember thinking these two guys, they had such a healthy bonding, like
Oh, was
like
it so was it like Maverick and Iceman?
maybe I
Maybe.
really don't remember
Yeah.
many of the
Cause
characters
I
because I
could
only saw it
like
once,
yeah, I
but
could see what you mean if we're talking about those people,
right.
but
So it's just like the examples of male friendships there. Another one would be David and Jonathan in the Bible. You see in the Old
yeah.
Testament the story of King David, one of the most famous kings in the Old Testament. I expect all of you listeners to know
You
who
should
he
know
is.
this.
You should know this. Come on. No, but in that story, you see David and Jonathan, the son of King Saul. They have an amazing friendship. And I've seen some people, uh, pardon my language, but screw up the Bible, and just like absolutely like they say things like, you know, David and Jonathan were probably gay. And that's that is one of the most like not that like gay people are disgusting because I would never say that.
No,
But like
to
that
put
is
that as the
disgusting
Bible?
because it shows that anyone who says that thinks of male friendship thinks that male friendship cannot be that close without it
Mhm,
being sexual,
mhm.
right? It's the same people I would say would say that guys and girls can't have friendships because you can't get to this point of being close to that person, and once you do get to that point, then it gets sexual. Like no, it doesn't have to, right? Again,
Mhm.
back to the wills. It doesn't have to get sexual,
Right.
right? So guys can have an extremely close relationship, like David and Jonathan. It said that I think the Bible says something along the lines of, he loved him more than he loved himself, which that's we all know the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them
Mhm.
do unto you, which is basically love people as much as yourself or more
Mhm.
than yourself. But back then, that wasn't necessarily like as commonly known of a thing. It was a very, very revolutionary idea when it was given by God, and it was back then very, very strong, like a strong statement to say that somebody loved another person more than he loved himself.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not, it doesn't have to be sexual, it doesn't have to be romantic,
Mm-mm.
but it is very emotional. And I think that there is at least a balance that we can find there between what I was talking about earlier about how guy friendships are very low key, very chill, quote
Yeah.
unquote. Again, there's a balance between that and the kind of friendship we see between David and Jonathan, or the kind of friendship that we see in Top Gun, um, of how guy friendships can look. They can have there's of course room for the chill side, the more just like with the bros side, the joking around side.
Yeah.
That's all great,
Right.
but you also need to be there to cry to your brother. I mean,
Yeah.
I would refer to my two closest guy friends as my brothers.
Yeah.
You need to be there to support and encourage and sharpen and lift up and just be the guy on the sidelines. Like if you see like a boxing match, how both guys have like their coach on the
Uh-huh.
side of the ring, and it's like kind of like that, or even like maybe even a stand-in fighter, somebody who always has your back and who loves you as much as themselves or more than themselves. Guys should not have a problem saying I love you to each other. That's something that I see a
No,
lot.
right?
Guys have this fear, and I think it's because of harmful messages like the one that people would say, well, David and Jonathan were gay. No, and that's a harmful thing to say because it teaches guys that they can't say I love you. They can't
Right.
express that love in any way, or they will have a sexual label put on them. They'll have what, however you want to define homosexuality. They will have that label put on them. And it's so harmful because guys should be able to have those types of relationships where they can say I love you to each other in a genuine way, where they can care about each other openly and publicly without it being labeled as homosexual or gay.
Yeah.
It's super harmful. So I would say that's an example of what I think guy friendships should look like and shouldn't look like. I
Yeah.
mean, guy friendships, like I said before, should not just be not caring. There should be a lot of care, and there should be a lot. There's room for that. Like I said, chill side, but there should be a lot of care.
Right, and I even think like now that I think about it more too, like there is a reason why like girls need like girl best friends. And when I think of like in a way of support, like think about like this, like if you're like a mom or something and you just had a newborn, like you don't know like how to do this, you don't know how to live your life normally with a
Yeah.
newborn. And you have a best friend who she's been through this before. She has like a toddler now and she's been through that newborn phase. Like you're gonna want to talk to her for advice. You're gonna need all this stuff, and you're not gonna be able to go to like your husband necessarily for that kind of advice because he's not gonna understand. And there's just a different level of understanding between the different genders, and very different life experiences they're gonna have to go through, that you're gonna need help from the same gender, just advice. And it's like one of my verses with one of my best friends, Alana, who's been on this
Yeah,
podcast.
go check out her
Yeah.
episode,
Oh yeah.
episode 3, I think it is. But yeah, go check that one out. It's pretty
Yeah.
sick. But anyway, go on.
Yeah. Our like friendship versus iron sharpens iron because we just like we look to each other for that kind of help,
Yeah.
and we both try to point each other towards God in all of our just ways to help each other through that. So yeah, it's kind of I think you could define like in a way guy friendships and girl friendships. You could define them the same way as people who go through the same kind of situations in life and experiences who are
Mhm.
going to need to lean on each other and strengthen each other.
Yeah.
Iron sharpens iron. And, God made that for a reason. And I love when I stumble upon a verse that talks about that kind of a relationship or just friendship in general. Um, and I think it's also, when you read in the Bible, like iron sharpens iron, it's not just for a girl relationship, it's for guy girl, deeper relationship, as in like married couple,
Mm.
guy in a guy relationship, just anything like that. Um, so yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
have to say about that.
Yeah. Well, so I will say to you listeners, don't be afraid to show your friends that you care. Um, pour into your friends.
Right.
Don't neglect friendships. Especially, I see this a lot when people gain a romantic relationship in their life, when God blesses them with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. A lot of the time, people will start to neglect their friendships.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
not. It's not. It's completely natural because
Yeah.
it's a very beautiful thing to have that kind of romantic relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you want to pour into that a lot. But it's always good to remember your friends and
Right.
to not neglect those relationships just because you have this deeper one with someone else.
Yeah. I feel
Hmm.
like that's kind of like a whole nother topic on its
Yeah,
own too.
yeah,
It's like
a
a whole
hundred
nother
percent.
question because I've been through that so many
Yeah,
times where like my friends have started dating someone and they've just completely forgotten about me and like,
Right.
or maybe not forgotten, but just neglected me and ignored
Right.
me. And some friends I've been able to talk to about that, and it's like they've been super mature about it and been able to handle that really well,
Mm-hmm.
and our friendship has strengthened because of that. Other ones, people have gotten super defensive and combated that with
Yeah.
like just I don't know, really weird arguments and things just don't make sense. And one thing I guess before we end this is I would say about that is that one example I've heard before is that when a relationship is this strong and it's going to lead to marriage, it should be something that is given this much attention.
Right.
Do I think that a relationship where you were literally going to get married to this person, like it's set in stone, you're going to get married to them, should be given a lot of attention? Yes, of
Yeah, of
course.
course.
But if it's like, and there's no way of telling it's between them and God, but if it's one of those relationships that you can tell, I'm gonna call a middle school relationship, like, is that really one that, is gonna lead to marriage? And that is between you and God. But if it's not, definitely you should still
Right.
carry on with your other friendships, I think.
Yeah.
I'm speaking as someone who hasn't been in that situation before, so it's hard. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's kind of what I
Yeah.
think about that.
Yeah, definitely. So remember, just pour into your relationships with your friends. Treat them in a godly way. Love them as you love yourself or more.
Selflessness.
Selflessness, yes.
Selflessness.
Others focused.
Yes.
um, yeah, that'll wrap it up for today. Ivy, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Don't forget to follow the Partisan Voice Instagram at partisan_voice_. I'm hoping to be making a lot more episodes throughout the summer. So stay tuned. Thank you for listening.